personally think that something like you proposed in the last meeting would be a good fit for that property.
And is that the consensus of the planning commission? Because it does necessitate a zoning change. It is zoned IFP presently, which doesn't allow for residential use. So we would have to come up with some type of zoning district or an overlay district which would permit residential use. If it was a permitted use, we wouldn't be here. We would just submit our plan and go through the review process.
To put it into perspective, our 2 years that we've been discussing this property and how to change the zoning, it's been, first of all, how to change it, what is its best use for this community? Obviously,
Least amount of negative impact.
yes. Best amount of growth with minimal impact. With that being said, we don't want 75-foot buildings. But we can't just snap change the zoning, okay, take out the 75-foot buildings, it's not quite that easy. So we need to come up with what do we need. And the general census of this board, and I'm speaking for me, what I took from this board for the last 2 years is that mixed use. We'd like to see a mixed use there because it's really the last piece of property that we have in Kenora. That size, right on Main Street, you know what I mean? It's the last piece of frontage that we really have. So we don't want a 75-foot building there, but we don't want the backs of apartments, you know, leaning out over 23 either. So I think that's where we were kind of leaning at the last meeting, but it got a little confusing.
I think what they proposed though was maintaining the frontage on along 23.
And that was in their proposal.
Right,
That was
so that
gonna be
is-
a mixed
that
use
is
along
mixed use.
23.
I mean, that is mixed use.
And the big argument from the residents was the apartments. And the amount of, part of the argument from here also was, to reiterate the traffic impact from apartments, high density housing, if you will. So that was where we left off in the meaningful part of that conversation. So I would say for me, I'm not opposed to housing there by any means. But me personally, I'd like to see it utilized well.
I gotta say that I think part of people's aversion to apartments had to do with whatever idea of apartments they had in their mind.
Well, there's a
So
stigma.
it depends on, like, you know, I think if, that's why I'm glad you're gonna, you know, talk about them, because I think that would be helpful. That, you know, we're not just talking about how do you feel about apartments in general, but how do you feel about this?
Right,
whole
and
type of
apartments, when you
apartment?
say apartments, we could say mobile home parks, and if you go to Florida, there are some gorgeous, very high-end mobile home parks. You know what I mean? So I think maybe a definition would be
Yeah.
in order, as you said.
So he's gonna hear
give,
some of the apartments.
Well, I brought some brochures along to show what we're proposing. I have 5 of them, I thought that would be enough.
I'll share.
You know, most people's, the stigma that involves from apartments, everybody thinks that you're gonna bring in apartments that are $800 or $900 a month. Our projection here is between $1,200 and $1,400 per month with an amenity center, you know, a swimming pool, a clubhouse, and, which is really the new way. So a person that can pay $1,200 to $1,400 a month can actually buy a $300,000 home, because a $300,000 home at 3% is what the mortgage rates are today, will put you in a proximity of $1,000 a month, you know, plus your taxes. So you're looking at about the same value. So it's actually a little bit more expensive to live in an apartment, but that's where the clientele has gone today. You know, most people want to lock and leave, and that's what this would be. We would have mostly 2 bedrooms. As you can see, they're very well maintained. We will be maintaining them. We're not going to be absentee owners. You know, we're just just not gonna do that. So I think that's very important, you know, that the people who are gonna be moving in there are gonna be able to afford, if you could just imagine, a $300,000 home. The thing is that a lot of people, a lot of young people today don't want a home anymore. You know, they'd rather have an apartment, they don't wanna cut grass, they don't wanna do any of that, but I think with our generation, when we grew up, that's what we did. So, you know, you're not gonna get the clientele, what the envision is that you're gonna get $800 a month, people having junk cars, you know, and the amount of investment that we're gonna have in the community, you know, obviously, we wanna protect our investment more than anybody. So that's basically what they are, and you can see it towards the end, you know, the exterior of the units actually looks very nice. You know, they're stone, it's not all siding. You know, the one project that you have there, we did in Middletown, we actually did 160 units, and they were leased in just over a year. So that's how quickly they went.
Is this the closest project to us that people could actually go physically see?
Yes, we have one in Middletown, one in Penn State, one in Lock Haven also.
So would it be fair for me to say, not out of order, that right over at Tel High and Honeybrook, they look very similar to this. If you go over there and look, it would be very similar to what you're looking at Tel High Community. There's actually a picture back here that was more. Like this.
Yeah, that's a pretty
That's a
good
fair
comparison.
assessment.
I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's okay, I just want, so people that live close to here could go look and see what this actually looks like in its setting.
Huh? Stone Cross, yeah. Yeah, it's relatively new, Jeff, I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes, it is down all the way in the back.
That's a good comparison.
Okay.
Never even gave it a thought.
And Tony, what are the amenities that go along with?
Well, we would have a fitness center and a pool, of course, and a workout area, and we would have people on site. You know, that's the key. You know, you're paying $1,400 a month, so it warrants that.
Right.
So again, it's not an absentee ownership thing where, you know, you don't know who to call if there's a problem or whatever. And I think we all realize that if you can afford $1,400 a month, you're not, you know, I hate to say it, you're not your run-of-the-mill, you know, slums. Obviously, nobody wants slums or, you know, things that you're gonna get complaints with the township and the community. We're very proud of what we've done, and we've done them also for other clients. You know, we have one in Middletown, we've also done another one in Elizabethtown. So we've done them, and every one of them is, I don't like using the word upscale, you know, because upscale to me sounds unaffordable, but they are, they're affordable, and the amenities attract people, especially young people, and, you know, there's not gonna be a lot of kids, you know, our experience is that we're gonna build 60% are gonna be 2 bedrooms, 30% will be 1 bedroom, and only 10% will be about 3 bedrooms. So we still have to do a market study, of course, you know, of what the demographics are in the area, you know, at this point.
So the 1,400, just so I understand how this works, I never lived in an apartment, so, does that include, you know, the pool and that stuff?
Yes.
Is there an association fee on top of that,
No.
or is it just 1,400?
No, it would be 1,400, you know, and that would include everything. You know, if there were townhouses, then obviously we would have an association fee, you know, with that for the amenities. But the apartments are all inclusive, and that's what people want. You know, they wanna know that it's gonna cost them X amount of dollars, and there's no hidden fees.
These type of high density projects require a lot more police attention. The, place behind Elmore Chevrolet, they're over there all the time. And those are probably 50% owner occupied, I think, maybe less. But, you know, police are there all the time. You have young people there, fights all the time.
I will tell you, we're very strict on on people that, you know, to get approved as far as their credit, and we do the background check and everything, so we don't, because it's our investment. I think sometimes if people don't realize, we was a community, and everybody lives here, but we also are gonna, you can imagine, if there's 140, 150 units, I mean, it's a $15, $20 million project. You know, it's not, and you don't want it to go bad, so to speak. We have a very vested interest in that, believe me.
I mean, if you have somebody that's a tenant there and they're requiring a police to come out, is that in the lease, they can be evicted?
Oh, yes, we don't tolerate any of that. We just don't.
Was the intent for the townhomes in this development to be for lease or for sale?
They would be for sale.
The intention, of course, is to be for sale, but that doesn't mean that there might be some rentals. You're gonna see that, you're gonna see that in singles also. That's the new trend nationwide,
Yeah.
is to have single homes for rent.
Mhm.
By the way, I'm sure Laverne would experience that too.
It's not our intent to do that.
No, it's not, but it does happen.
Yeah, it's been happening.
I'm just curious.
Excuse me, in terms of density, how many units are you looking at over there? I know it's a mix of apartments and townhomes.
144 apartments, and there's multi-levels, 42 townhomes, and 110 single families. That sound right?
And I didn't see the drawing, so how tall are your apartments? Two-story or
Can we hang on a
three-story?
second?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No
I'm sorry.
disrespect, but we'd like to keep it this way and then answer questions from.
If everyone in the audience has questions, please write them down or something. And then at the end of this, we can open it up and everybody can ask all the questions.
That was correct numbers.
And I know that we talked about it last week, one point that we talked about, is still a big concern of mine, is that, you know, we have another development with, we've got 80 apartments going in across, Morgantown Beverage. You have the townhomes that are being constructed down here, and I have Route 23. And it's like, okay, well, how much more can I add to that? That's a big concern. I mean, especially with that number of units in addition to, even if I would just say, let's just talk apartments, we just want to put apartments there at that number, that would give me pause. And then apartments, townhomes, homes, now you're adding a lot more to it. I'm just wondering, boy, how's that all gonna work?
From what standpoint? From traffic or from
Traffic.
market standpoint or aesthetics?
More traffic than anything, yeah.
Well, there are 18 townhouses here, so you're probably, ADTs are probably 100 trips a day, 180 maybe total, so that's not a big number. I don't know how many apartments there are across from the ones you're talking about.
77.
And that's gonna be, I would think, a lower end product than what Tony's talking about, because they're not gonna have online management. I would imagine they don't have a pool or, any kind of amenities, so that's a totally different market. From an aesthetic standpoint, I mean, I don't know exactly what the exteriors are gonna look like on the product down here next to the old school, but I would imagine they're probably gonna be pretty nice, but I'm also thinking the price is gonna be probably in the high 2s and maybe low 3s. The apartments across from the Pier Street, they're kind of set back, and from an aesthetic standpoint, the apartments that we're talking about are also set back off of 23. So your impact off 23 from an aesthetic standpoint, I don't think is that big of a concern. From a traffic standpoint, we're gonna have to do a traffic study if this moves forward. And there'll be, as a result of that traffic study, and after Terry's folks review it, there's gonna be mitigation or improvements that are gonna come along with that traffic study. And I don't know if we talked about it at planning, but I know with the supervisors, when we had our traffic engineer here, he indicated that the traffic lights from Twin Valley Road up to, Route 10 at the windmill, none of them are sequenced. So if they're sequenced, that improves the traffic. So I'm not sure if that kind of answered your questions, but, that's the response.
I was thinking about this, too, with, you know, the way it was, you know, presented, right? You have, basically, people are gonna go like either out to the Turnpike or 176, right? Or the other main place that everybody goes is to Walmart and Lowe's. So if they go to the Turnpike, they're gonna go out, you know, Morgan Way. If they go to Walmart, they're just gonna not even get on 23, they're gonna go right across it to the lake. That's something
I think your traffic engineer, and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you look at what we're trying to accomplish by focusing a lot of that traffic to that intersection, that signal intersection, that's gotta be a traffic improvement. I mean, that's gotta help the flow. So your point's well taken, that no one's even gonna get on 23, they're gonna probably cross it.
Yeah, you don't need to get on 23 to go to most of the places that.
The question I have for you folks, you know, I understand you've been working on this for a while. Have you had any of your consultants take a look at what they think should be on this property? Or is it just what, you know, the personal opinions are of the various folks? And I understand you're the decision makers, but I'm just curious if you had any professional folks take a look from a planning standpoint of what might work here.
I do believe that Eric brought us a couple examples from different areas, you know, as far as mixed use goes, what they have and how they did it. And Scott Anderson was working with Eric, if I'm not mistaken, and Scott Anderson no longer works with Great Valley. So, that kind of.
I think he's asking more along the lines of whether you've had a planner actually
No,
evaluate.
we have not had a
the site
planner
to
do
make you recommendations.
No.
Because they'll look at, like, we gave you some examples, I think the supervisors, we gave you some examples of what commercial space is available and some dollars and availability. They'll look at a more global view of your township and maybe what they think is gonna work. And I'll go back to what we've said numerous times, that some of the things that we all that live here would like to see, we're not gonna see unless there's more rooftops. And, you know, as whether you like the additional traffic or whether you like what you assume is the additional police, and I'd like to see the numbers, because I think what you were talking about behind Elmore's, that's isolated to one portion of that community of where the police go the most. I think the bulk of that community, the residential part of it, you probably don't see that much police traffic, but, you know, the rooftops are gonna be important. And as we said before, we experienced that when we did Penwood. You know, the Wilson folks, we talked to the Wilson Varecchia numerous times about the number of units, and that was critical to them putting in their center, which still has a lot of available space. And since the last time we were here, one of the businesses in there closed. So, you know, I understand you want commercial, because that's the tax base, but honestly, we've all got a lot of years in this business, and you're not gonna get the commercial if you don't have the rooftops. So. So where do we go from here? We really want to work with the township. We have a lot of experience in working with this township. We feel that we're vested in this township because we all live right in the area. But, we'd like to have some direction of what this board is willing to recommend to the supervisors. So, you won't hurt our feelings. Tell us what you'd like to see. I mean, I think our opinion of mixed use might be a little bit different of what I think maybe some of you folks' mixed use definition
Well,
is?
basically, currently the IOP is just for commercial use, no residential. And when we were looking to expand it, you know, basically we're looking to allow some residential in here, but not to like this extreme, is what I thought, you know, but, as far as the average person that has lived here their whole life, if you would ask them, would you like to see a large, you know, development that rooftops and have more convenient restaurants or whatever, or groceries, or rather drive 15 or 20 minutes to Shady Maple and avoid the congestion, and they would rather keep away from the residential.
I disagree with you, because at your planning, after your supervisor's meeting, there was probably, there were 5 people that came up to me and said that, how you guys making out, we heard you slam the door on you, we hope that they do, we hope there's residential in there, so.
Well, we were looking to allow residential because since it was, declared IOP, there has not been residential allowed in there. Prior to that, all those places down there are grandfathered. That was before, like 20 years ago, or whenever they made it IOP.
Mr. Snyder, that's what we're asking now. We're asking that the ordinance be changed to allow residential development in the IOP district.
Yeah.
Just because the IOP district doesn't allow it now, we understand it. We're asking to change, that the municipality change the zoning to allow it.
Yeah, for like 400 residential properties. You know, when we were looking at changing it, we were looking at allowing some, you know, small type of residential. House here, house there, is what I
That
thought.
wasn't understood.
That's not
That's
gonna
not what
work.
I understood.
We're gone, we're not doing that.
It's not gonna work that way.
Mr. McEwen, you explain, you just said it, and I think it's a great idea if you explain more along the lines of what you were calling mixed use. What is your idea of mixed use?
Well, probably if you want somebody that, it's probably the 2 attorneys that probably can do it, but I'll give you my opinion, and if they disagree with me, my feelings won't be hurt. But in our mind, mixed use is mixed product and also commercial and residential. And that's what we're proposing in this plan, and it's our first shot at this, and we want some input. And I'm hearing some input, but the input that I'm hearing doesn't work. So the mixed-use residential product would be what we're showing: singles, sometimes there's duplexes, townhomes, and then the apartment component, and also the commercial mix, that we're leaving the 8 acres or so out along, the 23 corridor. So, I sum it up, what mixed use is.
I mean, that's in the plan, and that would be a mixed-use development.
And one of the reasons the mixed-use development is really desirable, because you hit all segments of the market. So you're gonna hit people that are gonna buy townhomes, people that are gonna rent, people that are gonna buy singles. And the advantage to that is that your community is done more quickly, and then you have a variety of people, and it appeals to more people.
And it blends, it even blends with Highcroft, because you kind of move from the apartments and the townhomes and the singles that we're proposing, and then the larger homes that are in Highcroft, that actually is another component to the mixed use that's already finished. So, I think it balances out the market pretty well, and your point too, that it gets done a lot quicker, is pretty important, because nobody likes the construction.
And ideally, what we'd like to do is take the PRD provisions from your R4 district and create an overlay district in the IOP district based off of that. So if you look at your ordinance and see what is allowed in the R4 district with the PRD overlay component, that's where we'd like to be. Am I correct, Terry?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to put it in context for you, that we're not asking for the municipality to create something entirely new. we think we can work within that constraint that you already have.
I was a little confused, the grandfathering part, I'm not sure, I didn't know what you meant by that.
Are you speaking of?
There are homes down there that were built before they, made that zoning IOP.
Where was that?
Down on 23, the Boyd Hotel and stuff.
And, Coos Valley South.
Oh, okay, where the IOP from CF Partnership, where that ties in. Oh, yeah, well, that was before there was,
It was zoning.
long time before there
Yeah.
was zoning.
One question I have about just the previous, conceptual plan that presented, was there any other ideas as far as the rerouting of Willow Glen Road?
Yeah, do you have that plan idea? Because you said not to do any other plans, this is,
You got some marker going on? That's all right.
what, I'll try and do it this way.
Okay.
Okay, so here's Highcroft, here's the apartments we were talking about, Route 23, over here's Lowe's.
Right.
That road was coming in through the residential.
Right.
What we talked about, and I talked to a traffic person today, we're looking at flipping that road on the backside of the commercial. So the commercial can be backloaded, and the berm would be on the housing side. And then we looked at, as it goes up on the eastern side, and I'll pass this around, as it goes up on the eastern side where it ties into Highcroft, making that emergency access. Because one of the things that we heard was, you don't wanna take any more streets. And the heartburn for the HOA is gonna be, if the traffic comes down from Highcroft over HOA maintained roads, there's gonna be, trust me, that'll create a problem. We ran into that up in State College. So we looked at some sort of a turnaround cul-de-sac with an emergency access, so Highcroft would now have two access points instead of being one big cul-de-sac, which is basically what it is.
Sure.
So, but we still maintain the connection through here. We did talk about maybe doing something across here. This is what we have, but that connection is surely open for discussion.
Okay.
Because we didn't realize one of the neighbors commented about the traffic that comes through at lunchtime from Morgan, and honestly, we didn't give that a thought, so.
No, they're saying they're gonna put an emergency.
This doesn't impact any homes.
Emergency access.
It comes by the apartments, and we just make connections to it and do a landscape berm to shield the commercial along 23, and the road would be on the 23 side, and then the residential would have some protection and buffering. But that's just a quick sketch.
Yeah, I mean, please understand that we haven't done the deep dive into the engineering yet.
Oh, yeah,
because we don't,
No, I just.
we don't have.
As long as they don't forward. Yeah, I just was curious about the fact that there were other ways to solve that problem.
And
I mean, as far as that little, obviously, it's just, whatever. For that cul-de-sac thing, people are still gonna have to, people aren't gonna be able, people in Highcroft are still gonna end up going through HOA road to get to 23, regardless.
no, because what we talked about earlier was that would be a connection, a continuation of Willow Glen Road. And we asked that since it would be Willow Glen Road and come over to the intersection where the traffic light is, that would be the only street that we would ask, to be township owned and township maintained.
So the Black Marker Road would be a township road, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And if we could get Morgan to move their access further to the north, we could even shorten up Willow Glen even more, but.
Yeah,
um,
we're moving to Morgan Lake.
Yeah, I looked at that. After you guys said that, I looked at that. They're not gonna wanna do that.
They're not gonna wanna do that.
That's weaving around.
Oh, is it?
a lot.
Yeah.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah.
But again, in talking to our traffic engineer, to eliminate that unsafe connection of Willow Glen Road, probably every traffic engineer, and we know that the turnpike engineers have looked at that and said they would love for that to go away. So we're trying to come up with a way to eliminate that, to make for a safer, access onto 23 through a signal intersection.
Yeah. Yeah, like, yeah.
Again, as Bill said, that's just, that's,
Right,
it's concept.
It's conceptual, right.
Well, and I think that's the stalemate in the room is, you know, we and some of the people that live in the development out there would love to see, for instance, a 55 and older community or with mixed use, that would be wonderful. But you still have to have that builder that's here, that's willing to come here
Right.
to do that. So that's the stalemate in the room. Everybody has a concept in their head of what they'd like, but you still have to have the guy with the money there that's willing to start it.
And the market.
And the market.
Or it just stays the way it is.
Or it stays the way it is.
It's not gonna stay
And that's
the
a
way
real
it is.
stalemate.
It's not gonna stay the way it is. That's not happening.
Eventually, somebody will come and have an idea that fits the current zoning, but
I'm gonna tell you what will happen. A public builder will come in here and look at that property, and they'll look at your resources, and they will push you and sue you, because the big boys do it all the time. And they'll force you into doing something you don't wanna do.
how will they do that? We have other
Go
places.
down to Westchester in Westtown Township, and look at what Toll Brothers is doing to that township.
Yeah, you get like Cognanian or Toll Brothers or something like that.
They just have lots of resources. And
Instead
I
of
can tell you,
rezoning,
that
they can
these two gentlemen are not gonna do that to this township. That's just not.
Who built High Pro?
Heritage. Doug Ebenezer was a developer.
Because the streets in there are horrible.
Well, that.
We're not
that's
proposing
not-
there streets like that.
Yeah, that's not, yeah, that was, right,
That was this one.
yeah, right.
But you're right, on the other side of that stalemate is, we've seen it happen right here in Northern Township. We won't have a landfill.
You gotta win.
Essentially, we do. It's just right next door.
And the thing is, I
And
mean,
they had the money to buy their way in, that's the bottom line.
it's not a secret that, you know, Mr. Byler wants out of the airport. And it's also not a secret that his kids don't wanna run it. So, you know, it's not gonna stay as it is. So, I mean,
No,
this
maybe
is a,
not
this is.
forever,
Right,
but
right.
someday.
Right, someday, somebody could come in and put a 75-foot office building on there and
Well,
you
we're
would
gonna
say
work
it's
on
wrong.
getting that changed.
Well, we could, but this is a proposal that we have an opportunity to say, like, to work with or not work with. I mean, yeah, it's like, so we talked about, you know, mixed use, like the Eagle View thing and the 55 and over thing, but that's not what's being presented to us, so.
We've done 55 and older communities, I believe. You've done 55 and older communities, you haven't?
And we won't.
And this economy at some point is gonna take a dip, and they're the first communities that take the hit. And it takes them a while to come back, because the people that buy in there don't have to sell, they're not moving because of job, and how about Laverne? We saw that in the Lancaster County project. So, I don't know what the demand is, we haven't done a study, that's not what we think this market is looking at, and talking to the realtors. Look at how long a house sits on the market. There is a demand to be in this area in residential. We would just like to work with you folks to do something that is gonna work for the community, that you believe you can get behind, and that's what we're asking. We know the Eagle View community, That's a well-designed, that's a real mixed-use community, because that has office parks. That has, lots and lots of apartments. Most of those apartments are higher-end apartments. They have the Main Street type homes. They have the rear load homes. They have the Live Works, which, by the way, still has vacancies after, almost 15 years. That's not a viable product in this area, and it's not even a viable product down there. So, but Eagle View is hundreds of acres. We're talking 50 acres, 8 of which is 56 acres, 8 of which is commercial, and then there's several acres that are in open space. So Roger, you finished with me? Are you done with me talking now?
So, one more question for me. So, I'm not asking you what you make a year, that's not the question. The question is this concept what you would need to do to make it worth purchasing the property? Is that ultimately what you're saying? In other words, if you cut down on the apartments, or you cut down on the single family homes, or you cut down on the duplexes, that changes everything.
That's a question for Mr. Horning and Mr. Farina.
Pretty much so, yeah. I mean, he's asking a lot of money for this thing, and we got 40% open space there. If you look at the plan, which is a lot. And so, we need to, we're paying for the whole thing.
Right.
So we need a certain number of units to make it work.
I wanted to ask that question last time
Yeah.
so that the people in the audience could actually hear the answer to it, because, we talked about it afterwards, but that does no good. People need to hear why your concept looks like that.
I can tell you ideally, for the apartments, there should be 160 units. We're okay at
Paying for
144.
clubhouse work. you
Well,
mean.
because you gotta build a clubhouse and the amenity center, in-house staffing, so that, obviously, the more units, the better it is, but our minimum is about 144. 160 is ideal, to 180 for a complex like this. For instance, if you were gonna go down to let's say 60 or 70, it's not worthwhile for the investment, or you would have to eliminate some of the amenities. And we don't wanna do that. We've got to put the amenities in, just to make sure it's more of a viable product.
One thing somebody made a point to me about after the last meeting is that, what's the price point on the single family homes? Like, just a
Basic
ballpark.
price around 300.
Okay. They're not gonna build junk apartments next to $300,000 homes.
No, they'll end up
Yeah.
with options. They'll
Right,
end up
yeah, over 300, right.
330, 350.
They're not gonna be like, crappy townhomes and dumpy apartments next to homes that are trying to sell for 320 grand.
Just to elaborate on that, our Woodland Hills are 160 unit apartments. There was another builder that built duplexes, and then there was high-end singles also.
Mhm.
So that's the mixed use is ideal. You're
Right.
with Flying Hills. Flying Hills was done in the late 60s, I think, right?
Yeah.
And one of the most successful communities, and that's exactly what they had. So that's why the mixed use works, and again, it gets done quicker, for everybody's benefit.
Do you have anything in mind for the commercial plot on 123? Is there any,
They're talking to people, they got a bunch of leads, but
nothing
I can't-
concrete that
I can't
we're
sign
talking about?
anything.
Right.
I think it's safe to say that some of which is something of what people are looking for.
Yeah.
There's some pretty strong interest of, what some people are looking.
So
to
this
see.
is so this would pretty quickly result in some commercial development.
I would,
I-
think.
I mean,
Based on-
you have,
based on
like,
the
yeah,
feedback.
just like you have reason to believe that that's a strong possibility.
Yes.
Because of the rooftops, the commercial developers.
Well, sure.
Would be more attractive.
Right.
You gotta have both.
Right.
And that's what, sometimes everybody just thinks, oh, you need commercial and commercial. Well, commercial's not coming if you don't have the rooftops.
Right.
I had a gentleman come to me the other night.
Commercial,
Go ahead.
commercial can be anything, it doesn't have to be a store, it can be something where they're producing something also. you know what I mean? Assembly or something, I mean, I don't know, but, you know, like restaurants, grocery stores, it doesn't always have to be that type of thing. But I do know the township benefits more from somebody that pays wages to employees, we get more revenue from them than residential, which usually costs us more in services.
But it takes one to get the other, and we've had that discussion.
And there's, and like, I mean, we did just have, you know, Sonic just closed, the pet store just closed. I mean, there's space, you know, Domino's isn't opening, for who knows how long. Like, not to mention the fact there's plenty of undeveloped, you know, space even in just that border town thing.
Yeah, I think we gave the supervisors a map showing of all the areas, you know, you talk about manufacturing or assembly, what's available still down
Yeah,
in
there's-
the Morgantown Business
yeah,
Park,
right.
what's available in CF partnerships and the pads that are still available. There's, and plus the black stores that are not, you know, that are dark because
Right,
they've closed
Yeah,
in
Billy
the
Burger.
strip center.
right. I mean, there's space there, if people